You are 30 years old. You are an analyst, and you are good at this. You live in Vancouver, you own 2 decent suits, and you've spent the last 14 months covering industrials for a family office you will never see named on a building. The work is quiet, the money is clean, the clients don't call. Until today. You've been summoned to a windowless office in the West Loop. No art on the walls, no name on the door, just a desk, a lamp, and a man named David Sloan. He's the family office manager. Late 50s, silver watch, the kind of calm that only comes from managing money that was never his. He opens a manila folder, thick, tabbed, organized, and slides it across the desk toward you. You recognize the handwriting immediately. These are your quarterly notes, your analysis, your coverage of a company called Brave Industrial. For 3 consecutive quarters, you flagged the same conclusion. The stock is fully valued, the upside is thin, the risk-reward has tilted. You've done the work, you've built the models, and your recommendation, clearly stated on page 11, is to sell. David reads it, then he looks up. He doesn't argue, he doesn't disagree. He just looks at you the way a chess master looks at someone who has just moved their queen into the center of the board without protection. Not angry, just aware that you don't see what he sees. Beat. We don't sell, he says. Not won't, not can't, don't. And what follows, what he explains over the next 40 minutes, will permanently rewire the way you think about money, assets, taxes, and the architecture of generational wealth.
Let's stay with Brave Industrial. The family's position is enormous, accumulated over decades, inherited through trusts, layered through entities. The original cost basis is effectively zero. Through splits, reinvestments, and time, they're sitting on a $280 million unrealized gain. Now you, the analyst, look at this and think, this is a win. Take the money, redeploy it, diversify. But David sees something different. He sees a $280 million gain that, upon sale, becomes an $80 million tax liability. Federal capital gains at 20%, the net investment income tax adds another 3.8%. That's 23.8% off the top. Not of profit, not of future earnings, but of wealth that already exists. $80 million vaporized into the tax code for the privilege of moving your money somewhere else. Now here's where the architecture begins. Instead of selling, the family has established a $190 million lending facility at 3.4% interest, secured against the very Brave Industrial shares you're recommending they sell. The math is not subtle. They're paying roughly $6.5 million a year in interest to access liquidity, versus paying $80 million once to access the same liquidity through a sale. That is the difference between a toll road and a demolition. This strategy, known in estate planning circles as buy, borrow, die, is the single most powerful wealth preservation mechanism in the American tax code. As research from the Budget Lab at Yale makes explicit, loan proceeds function identically to cash from an asset sale, except without the associated tax liability. Borrowing against appreciated assets gives wealthy taxpayers an approximately 12 percentage point tax advantage over selling. The money doesn't need to be freed, it needs to be borrowed into existence. And the asset? The asset stays right where it is, growing, compounding, generating, untouched, undiminished, unsubtracted.
Here's where we need to recalibrate something. Most people think of wealth as a portfolio, a collection of holdings, stocks here, bonds there, maybe some real estate. It's a list, a spreadsheet, a thing you rebalance once a quarter. But the families David works for don't own a portfolio, they own a machine. Let me explain the difference with an analogy anyone can follow.
Bob invests. Bob is a good person. Bob has a 401k, a brokerage account, maybe a rental property. Bob's financial plan looks like a shopping list. Buy this, hold that, sell when you need cash. When Bob needs $50,000, he sells something. He pays the tax, he rebalances. And every time he sells, his machine gets a little smaller. Now contrast Bob with the family. When the family needs $50 million, they don't sell a thing. They don't even consider it. Because in their world, every asset is a node in a lattice, and each node supports the others. The Brave industrial shares collateralize a lending facility. The lending facility funds acquisitions. The acquisitions generate income. The income services debt elsewhere. Pull one node out, and the lattice weakens. Sell one position, and the borrowing capacity of everything else contracts. This is why selling, for the wealthy, is not an investment decision. It's a structural event. Now take this to the extreme. Consider a tech founder, name redacted, but the scenario is real, sitting on a $1.4 billion position in his own company. He cannot sell, not because of conviction, though he has that, but because selling even 5% of his stake would trigger an SEC filing, send a signal to the market, suppress the share price, and potentially collapse the stock's momentum. The act of selling would destroy the very value he's trying to access. So what does he do? He contributes a portion of his shares into an exchange fund, a private pooled vehicle where multiple investors with concentrated positions swap their individual holdings for shares in a diversified basket. The contribution is non-taxable, the cost basis carries over, and the 7-year holding period defers capital gains indefinitely. He achieves diversification, protects his downside, and the government never sees a realized gain. The shares sit inside the fund, growing. The founder borrows against the diversified position. The tax event? It never happens. Bob sells his car when he needs cash. The founder, he engineers a lattice around the car so it generates cash while he still owns it.
Now let's talk about the philosophy beneath the math, because this is where it stops being a strategy and starts being a worldview. There is a patriarch, real, living, his name sealed inside a trust, who built a water utility in the American Southeast. He purchased the operating rights in 1987 for $18 million. Over the course of 37 years, that utility grew. It expanded service areas, raised rates with inflation, and became the sole provider for over 400,000 households. Today, his family has been offered $680 million to sell it. $680 million, a return of nearly 3,700%. And he didn't ask about the price. He asked, what do we borrow against it today? This is the principle of permanent income, the idea that certain assets are not investments to be traded, but engines to be operated. The water utility generates roughly $41 million per year in distributable cash flow. It raises rates every 18 months. It operates in a regulated monopoly. It does not depend on innovation, consumer trends, or market sentiment. It simply runs. If he sells for $680 million, he receives a lump sum. Impressive on paper, catastrophic in practice. After federal capital gains, state taxes, and net investment income tax, he keeps perhaps $520 million. That $520 million now sits in a bank account or gets reinvested into something else, something that needs to be managed, monitored, and worried about. Cash is inert. Cash is eroded by inflation. Cash is a melting ice cube. But the utility? The utility is alive. It generates income automatically. It appreciates with inflation rather than being consumed by it. It serves as collateral for lending facilities that provide liquidity without triggering any taxable event. And when the patriarch dies, the stepped-up basis resets the entire cost to fair market value, meaning his heirs inherit a $680 million asset with a $680 million basis. The $662 million in unrealized gains? Erased.
legally, permanently. Cash is a photograph. An asset is a living thing. One captures a moment, the other generates moments indefinitely. This is the refusal to subtract, not stubbornness, not sentimentality, mathematics. So how does this all hold together across generations? How does a family ensure that the machine keeps running after the patriarch is gone? The answer is architecture. Legal, financial, and structural architecture that is designed not to evade taxes, but to ensure they never arrive. Here's how it works. The family's assets are not held in personal names. They are held inside a series of LLC containers, layered entities, often nested within trusts that provide liability protection, operational flexibility, and, most importantly, tax continuity. When the patriarch passes, the LLCs don't sell anything. The operating agreements simply transfer managing membership to the next generation. The assets inside the LLC receive a stepped-up basis to fair market value at the date of death, meaning every dollar of unrealized gain accumulated over the patriarch's lifetime is reset to zero. As Fidelity Investments explains, a step-up in basis adjusts the cost basis of an inherited asset to its fair market value on the date the owner died, effectively erasing the taxable gain for the next generation. This is not evasion. This is not fraud. This is architecture. And the families who use it don't think of it as a loophole, they think of it as the foundation of the building. They hire architects, estate attorneys, tax strategists, family office managers like David Sloan, whose entire job is to construct a system where the government never sees the gain, not because the gain is hidden, but because the gain is never realized. It passes through entities, steps up at death, and resets for the next generation. The cycle repeats, the machine continues. And here's the part that should make you pause. None of this is taught, not in public schools, not in most universities, not in the financial literacy courses that tell you to save 10% and invest in index funds. The average person pays what I call the loyalty tax, the cost of doing what you're told without understanding the rules of the game you're playing. They sell when they need cash, they pay the capital gains, they reinvest what's left, and they never understand why their wealth seems to plateau while the families at the top keep compounding. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a structural advantage, available to anyone who understands the architecture, but known almost exclusively by those who can afford to hire the architects. Now let's go one level higher, to the altitude where money stops being money and starts being governance. At the CEO level, at the sovereign wealth level, assets are not just financial instruments, they are seats at the table. A family that owns 12 city blocks in a metropolitan core doesn't just own real estate, they own the physics of the room. Zoning decisions, development approvals, tax abatement negotiations. They sit across from mayors and pension fund managers not because they were elected, but because they hold the ground beneath the conversation. Selling those blocks doesn't just reduce a balance sheet, it surrenders a seat. It removes a voice from a room where the rules of the economy are shaped. And once that seat is gone, it doesn't come back. Someone else fills it. Someone else shapes the physics. This is why, at this level, the refusal to sell isn't a financial decision, it's a power decision. The asset is a governance mechanism, the lending facility is a liquidity tool, and the family office is the engine room of an institution that is designed not to maximize returns, but to maximize permanence. These families don't think in quarters, they think in generations. They don't optimize for yield, they optimize for control. And the single most important rule in their playbook, the one that David Sloan tried to explain to a 30-year-old analyst in a windowless office, is this: you do not subtract from the machine, ever. Here's the truth that sits beneath all of this. The difference between the wealthy and the working class is not intelligence, it's not effort, it's not even luck, though luck plays its part. The difference is this: the wealthy hold assets that earn while they sleep. The working class holds wages that require the constant conversion of time. One compounds, the other depletes. One borrows against its own growth to fund the present without sacrificing the future. The other sells pieces of its future to survive the present. And the cruelest part? The rules that make this possible are public. Stepped-up basis is in the tax code. LLC structures are in every state's business statutes. Securities-backed lending is offered by every major bank. Exchange funds are available to accredited investors. None of it is secret. All of it is legal. But the knowledge, the architecture, is distributed unevenly. It flows through family offices, estate attorneys, and private banks. It is whispered in windowless offices between people named David Sloan and the families they serve. And it is almost never handed to the person who needs it most, the one still trading time for money, still selling to access, still subtracting to survive. The game isn't about how much you make, it's about what you refuse to subtract. The family that owns Brave Industrial will never sell. The patriarch with the water utility will never cash out. The tech founder will never liquidate, not because they can't, but because they understand something that most people are never taught. A sale is not a victory. A sale is a wound. And the system that makes this possible, it does not announce itself. It does not send invitations. It does not explain its rules to those outside the room. It simply arrives in the numbers. If this changed the way you think about money, hit subscribe. We go deep here, and we don't subtract.